Maybe bring that down just a little bit there, Blaine. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, this is Road to Atlanta, the Arkansas edition. So this is Blaine Gilmer over here to my left. I guess that's my left over there. Blaine helps us out. He's our recruiting analyst, our lead recruiting analyst over there on Dogs Daily. He's my right-hand man. Tonight, he's going to be my left-hand man. But anyways, Blaine helps us out. He's a killer over there. Also does a bunch of edits for us. So any prospects, any recruits watching this tonight, feel free to holler at Blaine for any of your recruiting edit needs. But what this show is, man, we finally got football. We have got football. It is on our doorsteps. It is coming our way. Schedules announced this week. We know when. We know where. We don't know what time just yet. The Georgia Bulldogs are playing. We've got their full schedule. We're going to go team by team. Not tonight. Tonight is the Arkansas edition, obviously. So tonight we're going to be previewing the Arkansas game. We're going to be doing a little bit of stock options, buy and sell some things, some themes that are going on with the Georgia Bulldogs this year. Got a new offensive coordinator. Everybody knows about that. We got some new quarterbacks up in there, some position battles all across the offense and defensive side of the football. We even got a kicker battle that might be shaping up as well. So, Rex Specs out of here. But anyways, Road to Atlanta. You guys get what this is. Obviously, Atlanta being the home of the SEC championship game, kind of being the home of the Georgia Bulldogs over the last 4 years. But Blaine, man, this is your birth child. What are you excited most about to talk about tonight on tonight's episode?
I mean, like you said, just the fact that football is back and we're going to be able to, watch the game that we love and, cover Georgia football, which is what we do here at Dogs Daily on SI.com. So, if you don't already check out the site on the daily, get over there to dogsdaily.com and check us out because we've got a lot of stuff that we throw your way every day. A lot of, promising writers that get a lot of content. And, we're just excited to kind of, once we knew the schedule, we're like, hey, we got to jump into a pod and do some stuff on the breaking down the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know about you, Blaine. I plan to do a little something like this throughout this season. Just get some instant reactions, some stuff like that. With us having very limited media availability, I got a lot more free time on my hands. So I'm more apt to with a new baby and all that, I don't really have that much time on my hands, but we can squeeze it in. We can figure it out. So, this is obviously important to me to not only, interact with you, talk about some Georgia football, but also interact with our fans. So we've got a comment section wherever you're watching, whether or not it's on Periscope, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're at, wherever you found it. First of all, share it. Tell all your friends great stuff over here on Dogs Daily's live stream, 9:15. And we'll try to keep it consistent on not only time, but date we're having it. So feel free to hop in on the comment section. We'll interact with you guys as we go. Feel free to ask any questions. If we're not burning sources or forced to burn sources by answering your question, we will do our best to give you our honest and upright opinion or answer to that question. So without further ado, let's get into Arkansas, man. I know this isn't really a highly anticipated matchup, but if anything, if you're Kirby Smart, you kind of want as much of a warm-up as you can possibly get before what you're getting into with Auburn and Tennessee and then Alabama, Kentucky, and Florida. They play their 5 toughest football games in a row on their schedule. We'll get into those more as we move forward with this show and live stream, but Arkansas, obviously a great warm-up, the easiest schedule. I know Kyle Funderburk, one of our fine writers over there at Dogs Daily, put out an ideal schedule for the University of Georgia this year, and this was the game that he chose to start with because of these exact reasons. Arkansas in a major rebuild there with Sam Pittman. Got a ton of transfers that we're going to get into here in just a second, but just your overall, viewpoint of where Arkansas is right now, Blaine. What do you think about the Razorbacks and the job that Sam Pittman has taken over up there?
I mean, Chad Morris, whether people say, want to put the blame on him or not, it was just a miserable run in Arkansas. Anytime you lose to a team like North Texas at a SEC school, it's getting rough. And not everybody turns it around like Tennessee did last year after losing to Georgia State and BYU. Arkansas definitely didn't have that same outcome. So with Sam Pittman coming on board, I think it brings a lot of excitement, not necessarily because he's a household name, but just because once you are around Sam Pittman, the infectiousness of his excitement and the love that he brings to his players in the game, I think is a big part as to why Georgia recruited so well during the Kirby Smart era. So Georgia fans know all too well what Sam Pittman can bring to the table. But definitely, if you're Georgia, you're not complaining about this opener. Obviously, Kirby Smart is a no-nonsense type guy and will never overlook anyone, especially a Sam Pittman coach team, because he knows how good Sam Pittman is. In fact, when Kirby Smart got hired, Sam Pittman was the very first person he called to add to his staff. And speaking of staff, Brooks, we were talking about it even before we hopped on here. Sam Pittman's done quite the fine job of building his own.
Yeah, and we'll get into that just a little bit, but not only going out and recruiting staff members and bringing them on. One former head coach in the SEC in Barry Odom, another great offensive coordinator, at least I'm high on, in Kendall Briles, at least his track record, where he's been in terms of offensive scheme. And we'll get into what Kendall Briles being that offensive coordinator means for what Georgia's going to be seeing offensively from Arkansas. But another thing that he did, man, he pounded the transfer market this year. Felipe Franks, obviously the quarterback that Georgia fans are very, very familiar with down there in Florida. Julius Coates, defensive end prospect he got out of a JUCO. Defensive tackle Xavier Kelly, who was at Clemson in their two deep, but wanted an opportunity to get a lot more playing time, which we think he's going to end up getting there at Arkansas. Levi Draper, a grad transfer from Oklahoma. Jerry Jacobs, another grad transfer from Arkansas State. So he's even recruiting and picking off of his in-state schools out there at Arkansas State. And Treon Smith, a running back out of Arizona State that was transferred in last year, but they will have available this year. He is up and, ready to go at the running back position. Obviously, the talking points, Felipe Franks, right? I mean, some very laughable moments in Georgia fandom history there with him. A quite famous fumble, one of J.R. Reed's 2 career touchdowns. So Felipe Franks, not a stranger to Georgia fandom. And if you're going to catch him, you want to catch him early, right? And you want to see Felipe Franks pretty daggum early in your roster because he's probably going to turn the ball over a little bit. And what we also know is completion percentage of 59%. And that's with a 74% completion percentage in those first 4 games last year before getting hurt. So, man, what do you think about seeing Felipe Franks in an Arkansas uniform, first of all?
Well, first on all the transfers, Felipe Franks from Florida, Xavier Kelly, you said Clemson, Levi Draper, Oklahoma, even Arkansas State is known for winning games in their division, in their conference. And then Arizona State, Trevion Smith comes from a winning program there, the winning mindset under Herm Edwards, a good coach. So he targeted winners, Felipe Franks, even though he's didn't have a stellar run at Florida, he won a fair amount of football games. They made it to, big ball games, games of consequence. Now, obviously, anytime your run sets up people to think Kyle Trask is the next Joe Burrow, you obviously didn't have a great run because Kyle Trask is nothing like Joe Burrow. And that means that your run was so bad, they think Kyle Trask's play is going to take him to beat Joe Burrow. Now, Felipe Franks, hope all the best for him. I think he'll do just fine for Arkansas, but it has to be a nightmare scenario for him to go up against a Georgia defense to start off with that is going to be just absolutely loaded. But you got to tip your hat to Sam Pittman because he knew he had to be creative. Anytime you're coming off a dismal run like of Chad Morris's, your recruiting class is probably not going to be stellar. So, to have any kind of semblance of a fighting chance in the beginning, you got to go get some experienced guys that can play right away.
Yeah, I think you hit on it. I mean, when you become a new head coach at an SEC program that's had the history over the last 5 to 7 years that Arkansas has had, which has consisted not much of anything but losing, you got to go out and get not only experienced guys, but like you said, guys that are used to winning. Xavier Kelly, say what you want about the playing time that he received at Clemson. that winning culture had to rub off on him just a little bit. I mean, he's not going to be letting guys slack off in the weight room. He's not going to be letting guys, fall asleep in the meeting room. Things like that matter in a college football environment. Not everybody is made to be a professional. At the college football ranks, you're dealing with 18 to 23-year-olds with varying backgrounds. You don't know what kind of discipline background they have. Having experienced guys like these, and even Levi Draper out there at Oklahoma, these are guys that have played in college football playoff environments, played for conference championships and whatnot. They understand how to win football games. I think that's very, very important. But they do have some returners coming back, some guys, and it's not a lot. Okay, obviously you go 2-9 in the SEC, you're not expected to have that great of a returning cast. But man, they've got one of the better running backs in the conference in Rakeem Boyd. Had 734 yards as a freshman, backed it up with almost 1,200 yards as a sophomore. And Blaine, the most impressive thing to me is this isn't just a guy that they've been feeding a boatload of carries, though he's had his fair share of carries up there at Arkansas. Man, he's averaged over 6 yards per carry over his career, over 2 years at Arkansas, playing behind that offensive line, playing in that offense that wasn't putting up a ton of points. To me, man, this is a sleeper in the SEC, a guy that not a lot of people talk about. But going into his junior year, man, he could put up some serious yardage. What do you think about Rakeem Boyd? They call him Rakeem the Dream up there at Arkansas.
Absolutely. And, with Rakeem's experience and his athleticism, now getting to play behind a Sam Pittman heavily influenced, and I'm sure he'll have his thumbprints all over that offensive line, even though he's the head coach. I don't care if it's a bunch of broomsticks up in front. They're going to get better with Sam Pittman coaching them, and he's a good offensive line coach. And to have that improvement will help out Rakeem Boyd's game. But of course, Georgia always takes pride in focusing on Kirby Smart's thing is you have to stop the run. Yes, it's a pass-happy league now, but in the SEC, it comes down to two things ultimately. Can you run the football and stop the run when you need to? Georgia has been able to do that for the last 4 years. That's why they've found themselves in Atlanta for the last 3. And, that's the same mentality, no doubt, that Sam Pittman will try to take. So I expect them to try to line up and see and, test the Georgia defensive front, even though it's going to be, what we believe from everything we've gathered, a quite, studly defensive front for Georgia this year.
Yeah, 74.6 yards per game allowed on the ground last year, nation's best run defense, and they didn't lose much. We'll get a little bit, talking a little bit more about that later on in the show. But they're, good luck running the football this year, basically, against Georgia. Jordan Davis is one of the best defensive tackles in the country at stopping the run. He's going to two-gap with the best of them. So good luck with Rakeem Boyd. I think he's, not necessarily looking forward to this matchup, though he'd probably tell you otherwise. They got a defender, plays linebacker for him, Bumper Poole. Pretty daggone good football player, too. He's a rising junior. And what a name. I mean, first-class name at a linebacker position. Bumper Poole. I'm taking that.
Poole. Yeah, Bumper Poole. He's a tackling machine. Up around the century mark in tackles last year. Anytime you can do that in the SEC, I don't care. What the team's overall record is. If you're close to 100 tackles in the SEC as a linebacker, then obviously you're doing something right, and you're able to shed blocks and get to the ball and pursue it well. And Bumper Poole will be somebody that Georgia has to undoubtedly account for. And people don't forget, it's not just like you're going to go in and be clicking 100% on all cylinders. I know every Georgia fan that I talk to wants to believe that the elixir of Todd Monken is going to, come in and be the correct all, and it's going to be 50 points a game no matter what. But don't forget, this is a new offensive coordinator with no spring ball, a new quarterback, which we're going to get in all this later. But, Bumper Poole and that Arkansas defense, if they can get some stops early, they're going to that always helps them believe they're going to stay in the game. So, he'll be a leader for them coming into his third year or sophomore year.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody that's ever played football knows that early in the season, it's a lot easier for guys to be playing defense than it is to be playing offense. Okay, it's see ball, go tackle ball. I know there's some complexities in college football, especially at Georgia's defense. It ain't just as simple as line up and go get the football. There's some things that they're running coverage wise and scheme wise and getting into correct gaps and whatnot. But for the most part, It's playing with aggression, it's playing with speed, and it's playing with effort and going and attacking the football. That never stops. Week 1 to week 10, it never stops on the defensive side of the football. So defensive side is going to have an advantage early on in this football season, especially considering what we had happen this offseason. They got a trio of young wide receivers at Arkansas, too. I don't know how much they're going to get loose against Georgia's defensive backfield. It's one of the best in the country, if not the best in the country. I think you can make the argument that Georgia's, 1 through 7 in that defensive back groups is about as deep and as talented as anybody in the country. But Traylon Burks, Trey Knox, and Mike Woods got 2 sophomores and a rising junior out there. Pretty daggum good football players, Blaine. But, we'll just see what kind of rapport they've been able to build with Felipe Franks, and for that matter, whether or not Felipe Franks can put the ball on him. What do you think about those 3 guys?
Absolutely. And, Traylon Burks, people are even there. If you go look online and see what Arkansas fans are saying and stuff like that, there's even some GOAT talk out there for him by the time he gets done at Arkansas. He's that kind of talented player. Now, consistency at the quarterback position, create the creativity of Kendall Briles will, play into that to see how that plays out. But you're absolutely right with, Eric Stokes is like Velcro. He's just all over receivers. I think he's criminally underrated, actually, Eric Stokes is. And, you said 1 through 7 for Georgia, and that's even after, Devod Wilson transfers to UCF. So,
and Keely Ringo goes down with a shoulder injury. Or not goes down, but has his labrum repaired. Yeah, you can list them off. It's as deep as it gets. And I think it is right at 7 right about now in terms of guys that are ready to play with SEC experience and guys that can, not only turn the defense over, but just absolutely lock you down at any point in the football game. Now, let's move on to these coordinators we talked about. You kind of hit it off early on the show talking about, Sam Pittman's ability to fill out a coaching staff. And I think that's one of the invaluable characteristics of a good football coach. Do you know offense? Yeah, do you know defense? That's all fine and good. But who do you surround yourself with, to me, is just as important. It's something we've seen Kirby Smart do an excellent job of in reverse, right? He didn't really have to bring, he brought a great staff with him in 2016. But year in and year out, he's having guys picked off of his staff, and he's being able to go out and reload with great hires like Todd Monken and Scott Cochran, bringing him in when his special teams coordinator goes and coaches at Arkansas with Sam Pittman. Matt Luke obviously filling in for Sam Pittman. Pittman doing a great job, and we'll start with the offensive coordinator, Kendall Briles. So for those who don't know Kendall Briles, Briles was at Florida State last year as an offensive coordinator. Now, say what you want about Florida State's performance on the offensive side of the football, wasn't dealing with a whole lot. Had some quarterback issues there as well. Houston, FAU, and Baylor. All right, those 4 schools tell you everything you need to know about what Kendall Briles does, and he likes to throw the football. What do you think this fit is out there in the SEC West, especially going up against Georgia in this week 1 matchup?
Well, when you're going up against anybody, any kind of competition in life, you can either be greater than, less than, or different than. So Arkansas obviously is not going to be greater than or better than anybody right now when it just comes to talent. And to avoid being just less than, you got to try to be different than. So I expect Kendall Briles to be a little bit different, to bring that some of his DNA, the Art Briles in him. Now, people say what you want. I know Art Briles, it was a train wreck out in Baylor in terms of administrative control and maybe some ethical issues, but those suckers put up some points. And Kendall Briles has been around that. He knows how to do that. I expect them to be a little bit more wide open. I think, honestly, if it was up to Sam Pittman during his time at Georgia, he would have spread things out a little bit more. I think he likes that kind of tempo because, he's a pure zone guy. You do not see pulling linemen. So what does the pure zone running game go with? Spread it out on the perimeter, get it out in quick screen, stuff like that, because then the defense doesn't know, all right, are we looking at a zone run or are we looking at the RPOs come into effect much better? So I see a lot of RPO and stuff like that out of Kendall Briles, and it'll be probably a test for Georgia early to make sure they know, their keys and their reads and all that, but definitely, stuff they've seen before.
Yeah, one comment from Sam Pittman kind of sticks out to me when, I think it was in his opening press conference there at Arkansas. He basically said, you can't line up and run inside zone over and over and over again and into a loaded box in the SEC. Well, part of that was on him last year at Georgia. You mentioned it. He is a strict inside zone type of football coach. He likes playing on a 45-degree angle there up front. But I think what he was hitting on was, Georgia did a lot of split back stuff, a lot of double tight ends. They ran 12 personnel a ton last year. Both tight ends into the formation with Eli Wolf and Charlie Warner. But I don't think you're going to see that a lot at Arkansas. I think you're going to see what you're talking about. I think you're going to see a lot of 11 personnel, a lot of tight ends in the slot, not necessarily loading the box. So lightening that box and running read options off of it, even though, say what you want about Felipe Frank's foot speed. I thought he was best at Florida when they allowed him to have a little bit of a physical presence in the run game. It just kind of to me, it seemed like it got his juices flowing just a little bit. I think Kendall Briles is an above average hire at the offensive coordinator position, especially at the time in which they went out and got him. Now, this next hire, I think, was possibly one of the best hires in the offseason. To go out and get a former head coach in Barry Odom and bring him onto your staff to be a defensive coordinator, I don't think you can say enough about it. And here's the deal. Say what you want about Barry Odom as a head coach in Missouri. Yeah, they didn't win they played about 500 football during his time there. I mean, that's what it was. I think an 8-5 season mixed in there in 2018 when you had Drew Lock. The fan base probably up there probably expected a little bit more considering you had, a first-round caliber. I know he went 40th or 38th overall in the draft to the Broncos, but you had a first-round caliber type of quarterback in the SEC that should be good enough to give you an opportunity to run at things there in the SEC East. But you can't tell me he never had good defenses. He had stout defenses his entire time there in Missouri, and he wasn't working with a ton of talent. Look, Arkansas, say what you want about their record in the past, they perennially recruit relatively well, right in the middle of the pack in the SEC. You can't say the same from Missouri. The talent level that he's going to have there in Arkansas on that defensive side of the football, I think you can say it's at least on par with where he left at Missouri, if not slightly better. Okay, and he does two things as a defensive coordinator. He, has a variety of defensive fronts that he throws in an offense, and he knows how to coach up defensive backs and defend the pass. Missouri had one of the best pass defenses in the country last year, especially against air raid offenses. So with the way college football is moving, for this guy to go out and get Barry Odom as his defensive coordinator, I don't think you can hit on it enough. What say you about the Barry Odom hire, Blaine?
Oh, absolutely. And you hit on it earlier. It's easier to play defense early on in the season. So, Barry Odom he's a good motivator. He's going to have those guys ready to play for him. Sam Pittman's going to have them jacked up. The bumper pool out there leading them, running around on the field. They're going to come out. They're going to come out inspired. Everybody will, just to be able to play the game of football after all this pent upness of COVID-19. I mean, it's going to be some hard hitting action, I bet, to start off this year. And I'm sure that like most SEC teams, the starting 11 you throw out there are going to be pretty dang good. It's just the depth that's going to be behind them that I think will, hurt Arkansas. But you pointed out Barry Odom, didn't have the greatest run at Missouri as a head coach. Well, people, if we're being honest, Kirby Smart's run at Georgia didn't start off ideal. And if it weren't for Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, and a ton of seniors coming back, and then, dare I say it, Jake Fromm doing unbelievable things as a true freshman, I don't see that Kirby's run doesn't maybe go. It may go the same way as Barry Odom. We may be talking about him being the defensive coordinator somewhere else if he had the same results as Barry Odom. So I think Barry Odom will do a fine job. I don't think it'll be enough to really stop Georgia this year, but they'll come out inspired to at least start off maybe for a half a quarter or so, I think.
So I think the good thing for Barry Odom is, he was in the SEC East for a decade. He started at Missouri as a grad assistant, worked his way up into that head coaching role, I believe, when Gary Pinkel left out there. But for him to have, stayed in the SEC East as long as he had, he's pretty familiar with what Georgia's going to be doing or what Georgia was doing. Now, it's a conversation we're about to get in with Sam Pittman. I'm out on this. Well, they're familiar with the Georgia offense because no one's familiar with it. Nobody knows what it looks like. We don't know what it's going to be like. So unless you played Todd Monken and during his Southern Miss days, or unless you're coming down from the NFL and you just saw Todd Monken for 2 years in the NFL or 3 years in the NFL with the Bucs and the Browns, you don't really know what you're getting into anyway. So let's go ahead and get into it, man. The hire of the offseason, or the kind of the shocker of the offseason, this was right after, I believe, the SEC championship game. We started getting a little rumors, and rumors started flying. Hey, Sam Pittman, Arkansas. Well, Sam Pittman's at Arkansas now. Now, he started out as an offensive line coach there prior to coming to Georgia. Blaine, I'll start with you because I got my own criticisms, not necessarily criticisms. I got my own questions and doubts about Pittman as a head coach. Besides being a motivator, let's take that out, okay? Because I think motivation and being able to motivate athletes is a little bit overblown. At some point, you got to be a good football coach. What do you think about Sam Pittman overall as a head football coach? And we haven't seen it since 1992, by the way. His only head coaching job ever was at a junior college out in Kansas in 1992. What say you about Sam Pittman as a head coach?
I missed those games. When I was 2 years old. But no, Sam Pittman, I think, in no way do I think he's not a good football coach when it comes to technique. I think he knows, how to coach guys up, especially in the zone run game when it comes to, double teams, when to come off, playing with your eyes, being able to get up to a linebacker. I think, and look at, even though he wasn't directly the head coach, I know Todd Hartley coaches the tight ends, but I would assume that a lot of time in their group time, the tight ends were working with Sam Pittman, and you cannot tell me there was a better blocking group of tight ends than Georgia had. And also, look at his track record. He's how many other people are putting 2 tackles in the first round? So, you can't disparage what he's done. Now, can you say that there should be a little bit more variety in the scheme up front? Yeah, but he wasn't always 100% in control of that. Well, now he's got the whole ball of wax. It's his job. He gets to have all of his influence on it. So, let's just see that first game. If a guard pulls, maybe we know that it wasn't all him at Georgia. If they run some gap scheme stuff, maybe we know. But one thing I do know about Sam Pittman, when I talked to a lot of recruits, and I talked to a lot of recruits who began their recruitment from Georgia under Sam Pittman, and all they talk about is that they trust Sam Pittman and they know that he loves them and cares about them and builds a true relationship with them. How many guys do you know, when they get a job at another school, are going to call a recruit and tell them, hey, you still need to go to Georgia?
You're referring to Broderick Jones. I think that's an incredible testament to what kind of man Sam Pittman is. I know there was some questions about him, leaving the way he did, maybe not showing up to the end of the year banquet, whatever you got to say about that. The players themselves have nothing but great things to say about Pittman, and for Broderick Jones to even give him a visit, that just tells you what type of recruiter he is. For Broderick to go up to Arkansas, of all places, when they were never anywhere into that mix for him as a 5-star tackle prospect out of Lithonia, for him to go up there on a visit just tells you how much he loved being recruited by Sam Pittman. But here's my thoughts on Pittman. Look, we already talked about it. The players love him. We all know that. I just think the recruiting hype might have been slightly overblown. Okay, nobody was talking about Sam Pittman being the world's best recruiter of offensive linemen when he was up at Arkansas. Okay, he got to Georgia and started recruiting like crazy. Okay, nobody was talking about Sam Pittman being the world's best recruiter when he was at North Carolina. All right, it's just not a conversation we were having. I think being in that red and black, being able to recruit at the University of Georgia under Kirby Smart, with Kirby Smart being your finisher, Kirby Smart's the guy who makes the final call. I think that's invaluable for recruiting, guy recruiting prospects like Broderick Jones, like Tate Ratledge, like Jamari Sawyer, like, Andrew Thomas, like Isaiah Wilson, all guys that he secured during his time in Athens. So we'll just see what the recruiting looks like there at Arkansas. I can tell you this right now, in that 2021 class, the class that he's pretty much taking control over, they've got 18 commits already. So he's getting in there, getting the work done early. A couple of guys I really like. I like Keelan Parker out of Oklahoma. I think for them to pull him away from the Big 12 as a slot corner, I think he's going to play really, really well at Arkansas. There's several guys up and down that list that I'm a fan of. I think what he's doing is he's finding underrated guys that have kind of gone under the radar. And you know what he can do? He can recruit the hell out of Big 12 country. I guarantee he can go into Chad Lindbergh, prime example, a Texas kid, was a Georgia commit because of the relationship that he built with Sam Pittman and then secured with Matt Luke. I think he can still do that. That Midwest territory is going to be dominated by Sam Pittman because all those other big dogs, they're all recruiting in the Southeast. Okay, the LSUs, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Tennessees, the Floridas. They're all hammering those states. They're all hammering Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Florida. So I think if he kind of identifies his players that he wants to go after early on and goes and gets in those doors early, because I think there's very few head coaches that can make mama and daddy love him as much as they will love Sam Pittman. I mean, he's going to be it's not just that he can relate to players, he can relate to their parents as well. But it goes back to the conversation we had at the very beginning. I think he did a great job surrounding himself with coaching, a great coaching staff. Now, he picked 2 coaches off of Georgia's staff. He picked the assistant strength and conditioning coordinator and took him up there and gave him the strength and conditioning job. He took Fontaine, the special teams coordinator, who's did a very good job in Athens during his time. He's up there as well. So, picking good coaches off of other staffs and identifying recruits early on, I think is something that you're going to have to do if you're going to succeed up there at Arkansas. All right, enough talk about Arkansas. Let's get into a score prediction. Look, and then Blaine, I don't know where you got this line of Georgia minus 24 to open. I can guarantee you right now, as God is my witness, this line's going to get bet up to about 35. All right. This line is going to go through the roof before kickoff.
You need to get on it now at minus 24 for Georgia. If you're a betting person, you need to get on it now at minus 24.
I mean, Georgia could run the ball 55 times and put up and win this game by 24 points. I mean, I really do think that's the case. Look, all these JUCO guys or not all these JUCOs, all these transfers that they've got in there, they are a brand new football team. Okay, not only do you got a new head coach up there at Arkansas, got a new coaching staff, new offensive coordinator, new defense coordinator, but you got a whole new football team filled on your roster. So that 2-9 we saw last year, or whatever it was, it's probably not a direct representation of what we're going to be seeing this fall from Arkansas, but they're still going to be a pretty bad football team in terms of the SEC. I'm taking Georgia by, I'm going to say 38. I really think I think you're looking at a 41-7 type of football game, 45-7 type of football game here in Arkansas. What say you?
Oh, yeah. I think obviously, even though Kirby Smart.
Our boy Christian Miller showing some love right here.
Even though Kirby Smart will never admit it, and he got into contentious thing with a reporter when he asked about the offense. Kirby Smart wants to go in this game and hang up a big number. He wants to score some points to end all this offense. Can't do this and that crap that he had to deal with last year. So I think Georgia comes out, and now I do think because of the relationship with Sam Pittman, they'll pull back the reins. They're not going to run it up on him. But I can see just by happenstance this thing getting up into the 48, 50 something points for Georgia, and Arkansas at the end, Georgia may play some young guys, stuff like that, may get up to, so I can see like a 52-14, 48-7, somewhere along the lines that same that you said. But in terms of what Georgia has to do, they just have to come. First of all, they got to determine who the quarterback's going to be for this game, at least to start off with, because I guarantee you we see multiple in this game.
Yeah.
Because Kirby's going to use this as a magnified scrimmage game. I mean, that is guaranteed. Was obviously it's a conference game. It's going to matter. But if Georgia doesn't win it, it would be a monumental disaster. So
understatement.
Just by talent alone, I expect to see multiple quarterbacks play. I expect to see a lot of touches for James Cook, and I know you're going to get into that later, but James Cook's going to get the ball at least 10 times in this game. If he doesn't touch the ball 10 times in this game, then everything that has been, reported, everything that has been, geared towards in Athens this offseason doesn't make any sense. I know one thing, he won't be on the field just to run jet sweeps and to fake jet sweep.
Oh, my God.
He's going to be lined up in the backfield, and he's going to get the rock either receiving it out of the backfield or getting carries. I expect James Cook to get at least 10 touches. I know you're going to touch on that in a minute. So
I'll tell you a little story. So we're down in Jacksonville, and I'm sitting in the press box next to Pat Forty, Andy Staples, Mark Schlabach. I mean, if there's a big wig in college journalism, I'm sitting right there with him. All right. And James Cook, and I'm the only beat reporter that's there. I'm the only one that has watched every single Georgia game, every snap, not just in passing, saw it on the TV on Saturdays. I'm the only one there that in that area that had been watching them day in and day out. In comes James Cook on I think it was like a 2nd and 8. All right. He's lined up in the slot and he goes in jet motion. And I said, jet sweep, just yelled it out loud in the middle of the press box. And all four, they ran a jet sweep. All four of them looked down at me and said, "Who said that?" I said, "Well, it was me." And they said, "How'd you know?" I said, "Well, if you watch Georgia football over the last 3 years, James Cook comes in and lines up in the slot so much that I got fans in my mentions saying James Cook's a slot receiver. No, James Cook ain't a slot receiver. They just put him in the slot and ran jet sweeps so many daggum times that people think he's a slot receiver. It's not going to happen. I mean, you might see it a couple times this year, but it ain't going to be a dead key indicator and a dead giveaway this year of what James Cook's going to be doing. So obviously, I'm with you. We're both in an agreement here. I think Georgia's going to blow them out. You say that they're not going to run it up. Kirby's not going to want to run it up. But I'm here to tell you, and playing on a college football team that got blown out a lot, you can't stop third stringers from getting in there and want to score on the football. You just can't. All right. When Daijun Edwards gets his first touch in college football this fall against Arkansas, when they're up 35 points and, everybody's played, Daijun gets to run out there and get a couple carries. Daijun Edwards is going to be running like it's a daggum state championship game for Copeland County. Okay. So
Kenny McIntosh.
Yeah. Kenny I'm going all the way down the list. Okay. I'm saying they all going to play in this football game. You're going to get a look at all of them. Kenny McIntosh is going to touch. I know that.
I guarantee you Sam Pittman would love to have Kenny McIntosh as right there with him with Rakeem Boyd as like his 1A, 1B type back. I mean, that's how good Kenny McIntosh can be.
I was just saying like they're going to go all the way down the roster. Everybody's going to get touches. Everybody's going to get playing time in this football game against Arkansas because, like you said, it is a magnified, glorified, whatever adjective you want to use, scrimmage game here for the University of Georgia. All right. One of these segments that I'm pretty, excited about right here is stock options. And this is something that our boy Matt Klug hit us up with. This little buy or sell. We didn't invent it, okay? Nobody invented stock buy or sell in the taking business here. The podcasting, the live stream, and the TV show. Ain't nobody claiming the rights to buy or sell. But I think it's very important for what, kind of stake your claim here on our opening show. We got Blaine's buys. We're going to get into Brooks's buys. We're going to talk about Blaine's sell, what he's selling this year at Georgia. He wants out on, and I'll get in on what I'm totally out on when it comes to this 2020 season for the University of Georgia. And we're rounding out tonight's show, so feel free to throw in any questions you got for Blaine and I. Anything Georgia football related. Don't get crazy in there, but we'll try to address as many as we can before we hit our time limit for tonight. All right, so stock options. Here's how this works. We're going to start with Blaine. Blaine's going to give me 2 players on Georgia's roster, and they could be young guys. They can be whatever. 2 players that he's really big on. He is buying stock in this year in 2020. And then 1 theme or theory or whatever, prime example, whether or not he's buying Georgia's special teams unit this year, okay? Probably not going to be. Blaine, open it up with your buys. Who are you buying on this year for the University of Georgia?
I'm going to start at the receiver position. Obviously, I could go the easy route and say George Pickens. Not going to do that. Obviously, everybody knows he's going to be an All-American, type player, that caliber. He's just got that kind of talent. I do think the guy that needs to be looked at from a leadership standpoint and from a production standpoint now that he's healthy is Kearis Jackson. I believe Kearis Jackson is going to be vitally important for that. Like I said, from a leadership standpoint, a lot of young guys, a lot of talented guys, but they don't have that SE experience. Say what you want. He hadn't been healthy. Kearis Jackson has been either a Georgia commit or on the Georgia roster throughout this entire, Kirby era starting in 2017, not the first year that they had with Eason at quarterback, but the national championship run all the way till now. Kearis Jackson's been a part of the program. So look for him. He just comes in. does his work. Even when he was hurt last year, even when he was not producing a ton, they chose him to go out and be, to talk to the media and stuff like that. That shows trust. If Kirby
Yeah.
trusts you, and now that you're getting the PT that he's probably going to get this year is a redshirt sophomore, then I expect I'm buying Kearis Jackson.
Yeah, I don't think there's an if he's going to get a lot of playing time this year. I mean, if you remember, opening game of the season last year, first possession, Georgia gets the football. Kearis Jackson's in the slot. Kearis Jackson started last year for the University of Georgia. And then he goes out there and breaks his hand midway through the third quarter. And it's like, well, nobody remembers Kearis Jackson anymore. Nobody talks about him. No, Kearis Jackson is an absolute ball player. And I'll tell you something about Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart loves them Peach County boys. All right. He loves them Peach County boys. South Georgia football is something that Kirby Smart loves more than anything in this world. All right. Micah Morris is going to be his dude when he gets to Georgia. All right. So Kearis Jackson's a tough football player, and he's got a lot of versatility. It's something Blaine wrote about for us over on dogsdaily.com about Kearis Jackson. Okay. And just if you guys haven't figured it out, by the way, when we tell you something, it's not just us giving you massive opinions. We got a little insight on some of these things. Okay. So, yeah, Kearis Jackson's going to have a great football season. I'm too with you there. I'm buying that stock, but I'm going to go with another wide receiver that everybody knows I'm on. I've been on Jermaine Burton's butt since December when he signed at the University of Georgia. And it's somebody I've gotten to see up close and personal 24 times. Okay. I have not seen, and I've seen probably 1,000 wide receivers at this point up close and personal. I have not seen one like Jermaine Burton. I can't blow this one up enough. And I've been all over it from the jump, and I'm not here to toot my own horn. But what I'm telling you is this dude's going to be great. An absolute bona fide star. What people thought George Pickens was going to be, Jermaine's, is going to be, will be at the University of Georgia. Jermaine Burton is the next one. He is next in line to do all of those things. He's an incredible route runner. He attacks the football, with the best of them at 6 foot tall. To me, I compared him to Devontae Adams. That's what he looks like to me when it comes to the route running, except he's faster. And when I look at the 40 times and I really get into it and just watch his ball skills, watch him catch the football, that comp of Devontae Adams is slowly turning into Odell Beckham for me because he's got that flash. He's got that flair. He's got everything you want from a wide receiver. Put it in the books, man. Jermaine Burton will have a 1,000-yard season. I don't know when it's going to come. I don't know if it's going to be this year just because of how deep that wide receiver group is. And he's not just going to be playing in the slot. He's going to be playing Z. He's going to be playing outside. He's going to be in the slot. He's going to do everything this year for the University of Georgia in that Todd Monken offense. And I really do think for the next 2 years, because George Pickens, we all know, is a 3-and-done type of prospect. He's not going to be around in Athens very long. For the next 2 seasons, it's a two-headed monster in Athens. And that two-headed monster consists of George Pickens and Jermaine friggin' Burton. All right. Nail it down. Put it in the coffin. It is done. I am buying all of the stock in the world I can on Jermaine Burton. Blaine, who's your second buy? Who's your second buy? Who's the second guy on this roster that you're putting stock in for the 2020 season?
It's somebody that nobody's talking about because, when you think of the Georgia defense right now, you think of them being able to play that patented man-to-man coverage, locking them up with Eric Stokes, locking them up with, Tyson Campbell on the other side, people like that. You got Richard LeCount, you got DJ Daniel, all these guys. Mark Webb is my guy that I'm buying stock in, and here's why. He is a heat-seeking missile when he comes up to play the run. Georgia is so good across the board on the other 4 positions in the secondary that they're going to be able to be creative with Mark Webb. I can see Mark Webb roll it. He's got the size and the physicality to be able to roll down and play kind of a spy technique in the box on mobile quarterbacks. He can also cover backs out of the backfield, but when he sees that ball in the gut of a running back or that ball is caught on a short pass play, Mark Webb is going to cause problems. He can dislodge you from the football. I mean, that's the kind of hitter that Mark Webb is. I'm buying Mark Webb stock.
I think this is a good one as well. And Malik Herron obviously entering his senior season at the University of Georgia. It didn't really pad the stat book last year, but was up in the higher ranks in terms of quarterback pressures at the defensive end position. So we know he's going to be the leader up front. I think that's a great suggestion right there, Top Dog Blogging. Y'all need to check him out. That is a young writer that I'm calling my shot here. One day he's going to be working for SI. I'm just going to let y'all know. Go check out Top Dog Blogging over there on Twitter. That dude does a great job, a fantastic young writer and a fantastic young man. Can't speak highly enough with him. He just did an interview with Rennie Curran. So y'all go check that one out. It's a good article and a real extensive look at one of Georgia's best linebackers. All right. I like that you and I are about to disagree a little bit because there's a dude who was my Jermaine Burton in 2019 on that defensive side of the football. And he was a guy that was kind of overlooked in that 2019 class that was obviously world class. Everybody talking about Tyrique Stevenson, baby. I've been on Tyrique Stevenson for a long time too. And if you go back and read one of our very first articles at dogsdaily.com, and back then we were Bulldog Maven, which what the heck is a Maven? Nobody knows. That's why we're dogsdaily.com now. But anyways, one of my very first articles I wrote was obviously a depth chart projection. All right. Who's going to start against Vanderbilt? Before he stepped foot on the field as a true freshman, I called for Tyrique Stevenson to be the starter at the star position. And here's why. All right. He's 6 foot. He's 205 pounds. And I saw an NFL evaluator and talked to an NFL evaluator the other day compared to Minkah Fitzpatrick. He is this type of football player. All right. He can lock you down, just like you talked about with Mark Webb. He can lock you down in man-to-man coverage. He can play single high safety if you ask him to. He can come down and strike in the run game. I mean, he can blitz. We saw him blitz and sack Bo Nix last year against Auburn. I think Tyrique Stevenson is the most versatile defender that they have on this Georgia roster, and there's a bunch of them, okay? I think Tyrique is going, in the very near future, going to be a first-round draft pick. And might just borderline win the Jim Thorpe Award. I think he's that good. I think that highly of Tyrique Stevenson, and that's no secret. Everybody's hopping onto it at this point. I think, Blaine, what you've got in your corner in this argument, we'll rehash this throughout the year because, Mark Webb, Tyrique Stevenson, they're battling it out as we speak for that starting star position. I think one thing you've got in your favor, Mark Webb started every single game at the star position last year when he was healthy. So.
And he's a senior. And
he's a senior.
People can say what they want, whether it's right or not. Kirby Smart's a loyal guy. He really is. And if you've put in the, I'm not saying he's going to start a guy just because he's a senior, but if it's close and Kirby Smart believes in you and trusts you, that goes a long way with him. And Mark Webb is really going to do that. But, you talked about versatility. Doesn't it just go to say how deep Georgia is across the board when we're talking about Tyrique Stevenson and Mark Webb? And Mark Webb won the Charlie Trippi Award for most versatile player on the Georgia football team last year. I mean, that's what the Georgia coaches and staff thought about him, was to vote him the Charlie Trippi Award for the most versatile player on the team. So, I mean, you really got a lot of stuff to choose from here. But what's your theme that you're going with? What's your overall?
I'm going, and it's kind of a player, but it's really a role. I'm going with that third down hybrid back that's so prominent in Todd Monken's offense. And I think James Cook's going to be playing it. It's going to be a combination of James Cook and Kenny McIntosh, but James Cook's going to get most of it. But look, if you follow Todd Monken's history as an offensive coordinator all the way dating back to Southern Miss, he's a proponent of throwing the ball to the running back. And if you know anything about Zamir White nowadays, after 2 knee surgeries, is more of a ground and pound, give me 20 carries, let me run over the linebacker for an extra 3 yards type of running back. All right. The second, and those are great. That's what Nick Chubb basically, he's a Zamir White on steroids, like a whole bunch of steroids. All right. That's what that straight linear running back, that's what Nick Chubb is. And Todd Monken almost rode that joker to an NFL rushing title last year. But Kareem Hunt was also used last year a ton when he got, eligible after that 6-game suspension for, doing some questionable things during his off time and during his downtime. But I think you're going to see 2 running back formations this year. Cleveland led the NFL last year in 2 running back formations. All right. It's something that Todd Monken is a proponent of doing, even back to his days with Jalen Richard and Ito Smith, who you guys should know those names. Jalen Richard's an NFL running back right now. He plays for Oakland. Ito Smith plays for the Atlanta Falcons. These are NFL guys. They are NFL guys that played in the same backfield at Southern freaking Miss. All right. That's how much Todd Monken uses his running backs in a very versatile package. So I'm buying, absolutely buying the idea that Todd Monken is going to be using 2 running backs. And I know Georgia's always used 2 running backs. They've always split time, always done it. This is going to be a totally different animal this year. He's going to be using guys in a variety of different ways. I'm buying that. And it ultimately means I'm buying James Cook stock. What is the theme that you're buying, Blaine?
Kirby Smart, if he's got buttons on his shirt, he's unbuttoning a couple this year. He's letting it flow. He's getting here, and he's
loosening it up a little bit.
He's going to be loose, and here's why he can be loose, because they're going to be able to put up points this year. And when you're able to put up points, and you're a defensive-minded, there's so many things that Kirby Smart had in his bag defensively last year that he never brought forward even, and here's why. Because he was having to be conservative. He didn't want to give up a big play because points were hard to come by last year. I don't think that'll be the case. I think Georgia, through sheer talent alone and the addition of Todd Monken, will be better on offense. And he has such a good secondary that you're going to see Kirby Smart dial up even more exotic pressures more frequently this year. So I see Georgia with a more aggressive, more loose style of play this year, and that's what I'm buying in 2020.
Yeah, before the season starts, as we get closer to the season, I've got my hands on some all 22 tape, and I'm gonna go back and show the audience and our readers. I got a dog going crazy. I'm gonna go back and show the audience and the readers exactly what we're talking about. Kirby, over the last couple of years, they've been middle of the pack, bottom of the pack in the SEC in terms of sack totals and TFLs, okay, tackles for loss. Plays that he likes, part of his havoc plays are sacks and tackles for loss. They didn't do a bunch of it, all right, because what they did was they played a whole bunch of contain. You do not break contain. You do not let quarterbacks get out of the pocket because we are protecting. We are, like Blaine says, not giving up big plays. I think you're hitting on what I'm about to get into on my sell. They're going to play a lot more aggressive this year on the defensive side of the football, and they're going to get after the quarterback, and they're going to let Azeez Ojulari loose. I really do think Azeez Ojulari is one of the best pass rushers in college football. He just doesn't get the opportunity to rush, and it's something I'm going to show in our pass breakdown. If it's not 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, automatic passing downs, they didn't let that kid last year pin his ears back and go get after the quarterback. Okay, so when they did, you saw him do, turnstile Wanya Morris twice against Tennessee. When they let him loose against Baylor, you saw him with a strip sack fumble in the middle of the 4th quarter when they absolutely needed it. So I think it's something you're going to see a lot this year. Blaine, we'll hop right back into your sell. What are you selling this year on Georgia's 2020 football season?
I'm selling that it's Jamie Newman or bust. I don't think that, obviously Jamie Newman came here because he had a good idea that he was going to be the guy. Well, that's all fine and good. You go to the Elite 11 and you throw a bunch of ducks to high school kids, which I know that, it's not all about how you practice. It's about how you perform in games. Look at Tim Tebow, for goodness sake, one of the greatest college players of all time, looked terrible in practice. I'm not saying Jamie Newman has, but based off film that we've had, he's not the most accurate guy all the time. He brings a lot more to the table. What you do have is you have JT Daniel, who's come in, and he wouldn't have come in if Todd Monken and Kirby Smart didn't really want him there. And it's going to be a battle. I'm not saying Jamie Newman may go on and win the Heisman, take Georgia to a national championship, play every snap all year, but I feel like it's going to be a true competition. JT Daniel, also there's reports out there, Juan Mathis is looking tremendous, and you got to feel great for that kid with all that he's been through. It's an open competition. It's not going to be cut and dry. Yes, Jamie Newman may be the guy, but I'm selling the notion early on that it's Jamie Newman or bust.
All right, so when Blaine talks about the Elite 11 not looking great, he ain't talking off the cuff. I was right there. That footage that some of you guys saw, if you haven't seen it, it's on our website. That was me. I took that stuff. It didn't look great. Blaine is absolutely right. The ball did not jump. Matter of fact, Brock Vandagriff was standing right behind him and throwing in the same group. You could make the case Brock Vandagriff's ball looked a little better than Jamie Newman's. But here's the deal. Nobody, and I mean nobody, not even the Georgia coaching staff, has seen what Jamie Newman's full package looks like until you get that man in full pads, until you let him go in full bore, because, man, and he might be listed as 6'4". He's not. He's about 6'3". Okay, maybe 6'3.5". He's not 6'4". 6'4" is Carson Beck. Carson Beck has got a good inch to an inch and a half on Jamie Newman. But what he is, dude, if he walked up to you and told you he played middle linebacker at Georgia, you wouldn't question him. He is absolutely rocked up, and he always has been. He's actually put on a little weight this offseason, some good weight as well. Matter of fact, I got a story for you. This is an inside story for you here late on the show. There was one particular Georgia football player this year that when Jamie Newman walked up to him in the weight room, he thought it was Trey McKitty. He thought it was the tight end transfer from Florida State. He said, "What's up? I'm so-and-so." And he goes, "I'm Jamie Newman." And the guy gulped. He said, "You're Jamie Newman." I mean, he is that big. Okay. So all of what the full package that he brings to the table, you're not ever going to see until game one, snap one, because even especially with him dealing with that minor foot injury that he's got going on right now, you're not going to get to see everything. And even the coaching staff is not going to see it until game one, snap one, when the whistle blows and he says down, set hut for the first time and gets 9 to 10 carries. Because I think that's what you're going to see this year for the University of Georgia at the quarterback position. All right, so that's what you're selling. You're selling that this is Jamie Newman's show, even though I'm there with you. Look, Kirby Smart's not into anymore about just riding one guy, especially in this time. And what we got going on right now, I think you could see him, in that first 5-6 game stretch, because it's going to get rough. I mean, they're playing some dogs up there in weeks 2 through 6 or 2 through 7 because they got a bye week before they play Florida. Yeah, it might look rough there for a minute. And he's got a quick trigger finger this year. I guarantee you. You said he's unbuttoning a couple of his top buttons. He's doing the same thing at the quarterback position. I can guarantee you. As soon as he sniffs a bad thing going south, he will pull that trigger and put JT Daniels in there and let it rip. Or Dwan Mathis. Look, code words here. When Blaine says reports, we're hearing Dwayne Mathis is looking good. He's looked great all offseason, okay? He got one of the strongest arms you could ever imagine at the quarterback position. If all you had to do was show up early to football games last year and watch the dude warm up, I'm talking 65-yard bombs. Okay, he's got one of the biggest arms I've ever seen. So Dwan Mathis looking great. JT Daniels, an extreme talent at the quarterback position. All right, here's what I'm selling. Anybody that's telling you that this defense is going to be better than it was last year doesn't know how great this defense was last year. When I say they were historic, I mean historic. They, I think, 11.48 points per game last year in the SEC. In a modern era of football, when they are chunking it and they are scoring points, 11.46 points per game. Blaine, do you know when was the last time they held opponents to that few points?
I don't know. Is it like
1981? 1981. They held opponents to 10.6 points per game.
1980 or 1981.
You're right. You are definitely right on that one. 1981. All right. We went through 3 decades of college football. Georgia didn't have a defense like they did last year. All right. So this theory that they're going to come out and perform better, statistically, throw it out. Now, here's what they will do. Like Blaine said, they're going to play a lot more aggressive this year. I 100% believe that. But you also have to take into account if LSU's the model that everyone wants to use, the LSU turnover from 2018 to 2019 that Georgia's kind of dipping their feet into right now, headed in from 19 to 20. It's kind of, I mean, there's a lot of similarities. You're bringing in an NFL offensive coordinator. You're getting rid of an old school pro style run the ball type of offense and bringing into modern football and an air raid attack. It's a whole lot of similarities. What the other similarity is the fact that LSU's defense did not get worse talent wise from 2018 to 2019, but they gave up about 7 to 10 points more per game between those 2 years. Okay. So when you score more points, the opposition is on the field a lot more. All right. And when that happens, you're giving up more opportunities. When you're not controlling the clock 34.5 minutes per game, like Georgia has the last 4 years, your defense is going to be on the field more. If your defense is on the field more, they are going to give up more points. All right, so that was our show. All right, and just for audience members that are jumping back in, what this is what we like to call the road to Atlanta, baby. This is a show we're going to do leading up to the season about Georgia's matchups. And Blaine, you wanted to talk about something. Oh, you want to play the music on the way out. Go ahead, play it. Play it as you want, baby. We'll talk. I'll talk through it. But anyways, road to Atlanta. This is our show. We're previewing all of the 2020 season, and we're going to do this throughout the year. All right, as Georgia, comes up and finishes, and we find some results out on these football games, we're going to be talking about it. We'll give you some insider info on this. We're not going to give it all out just because, again, I'm not trying to burn no sources, man. I ain't trying to get nobody fired. I ain't trying to get my butt fired. I ain't trying to do none of that. So it ain't going to be that, but we will take your questions. We will address anything you want to talk about within reason. But, man, Blaine, I'm excited about this football season, not because I'm a Georgia fan, not because of anything like that. I'm a football fan, and by God, we got football, baby.
Absolutely. Glad to do it, man.
All right, we will see you guys next time. Probably going to tee this up. What's today? Today is Tuesday. We'll start Tuesday next week. We might do 2 next week because we got to squeeze these in. Got 10 games and got a little over a month before we have kickoff, man. We got kickoff September 26th. It is coming our way. We'll see you guys next time. Appreciate y'all for being here. Check out dogsdaily.com on si.com whenever you get the chance. Blaine, appreciate you, brother.
Have a good one.